Hello again. It's chapter 23 next, skating. There's a picture here, I think. It must be Hattie and Tom, because he's wearing his pyjamas. Have a look. Ooh. Perhaps that's Ely Cathedral that we've read about before. Let's see. That winter, the frost had begun at the end of December and went on with a milder spell for a week in January to the beginning of March. It was one of the greatest severity. Even running waters froze at last. Ice stopped the wheels of the upriver watermills and blocked the way for the barges that in those days plied from King's Lynn as far upstream as the Hythes of Castleford. The frost was all over England. On some waters oxen were roasted whole, as though that proved what fine frost this was and what ice was best used for. On the Cheryl at Oxford, a coach with 6 horses was driven down the middle of the frozen river to the great satisfaction of all concerned. But the people of Castleford and the Fens knew the truest and greatest and best use of ice. They skated. There had been skating on the river for several weeks when Tom and Hattie came down to it, and it seemed to them as if there must be more people skating than could possibly be doing market day business in the town. Not everyone skated well or fast. There were some learners, and a policeman who moved with the dignified pace of a navy blue swan. There was also the newer fashion of skating, figure skating. Hattie pointed it out to Tom. In one place an orange had been set centrally upon the ice, and 4 top-hatted, dignified gentlemen were describing a harmony of figures to it, from it, round it. Suddenly a town urchin on rusty fen runners, partly strapped, partly tied with string to his boots, darted in, snatched up the orange and dashed away again with his teeth already in it. The swaying, shifting crowd of skaters closed up behind him, and the figure-skating gentlemen stopped skating and were extremely annoyed. Like Tom, Hattie laughed aloud at the impudence of the theft, but all the time she was looking round her sharply and a little nervously. Among all the townspeople and country people, someone might recognise her and pass comment on her being there alone. However, Hattie was fortunate. No one seemed to notice her at all. The skates were on, and now Hattie and Tom were ready for the ice. 2 skaters on 1 pair of skates, which seemed to Tom both the eeriest and the most natural thing in the world. A new skill and power came into him, as though these skates knew their work better than the skater. He could skate as well as Hattie because he had her skates. The only difference between them was that his blades left no cut or bruise upon the surface of the ice in travelling over it. They did not skate with linked hands as many skating partners did, for fear of the odd appearance being noticed. But once they had left behind the thick crowd of sociable skaters just below the town, they skated abreast, keeping time together, stroke for stroke. There was no wind at all that afternoon, and they cut through the still air faster and faster. Hattie had pinned her skirt up above her ankles for greater freedom of movement, and now she abandoned the use of her muff the better to swing her arms in time with their skating. Their speed made the muff fly out behind her on its cord, and at last a stroke gave it such a violent fling that the cord broke, and the fur ball of the muff shot away and landed in the middle of a game of bandy, and somehow became part of the game and was never seen again. Hattie saw it disappear, and neither stopped nor faltered in her course, but only laughed, as though she cared nothing now for muffs or improprieties or aunts. They skated on. They left the Castleford reaches altogether. They came to a lock, with its gates frozen fast, and its weir frozen too. They hobbled ashore and round the lock and on to the ice again. They skated under a bridge, and even in the shelter of it the ice bore strongly. All the ferryways were frozen as they went, with the ferrymen standing sourly by the ice-locked boats. Hattie and Tom skated on and on. The skaters they met now were mostly men. There were few girls that Tom could see, and none without escort. They came to a lonely riverside alehouse. Its signboard said, "The 5 miles from anywhere, no hurry." Here there were skaters, labourers from the fen farms, resting on the bank. They called out jovially to Hattie, asking if she would like any of them to skate with her for company. They went on calling until she called back that she had a companion with her, even if they could not see him. The skaters thought this was a great hoax and laughed, taking no offence, and Hattie laughed, and Tom laughed too, but no one except Hattie heard him. They skated on, and the thin, brilliant sun was beginning to set. Hattie's black shadow flitted along at their right hand along the dazzle of the ice. Sometimes they skated on the main river, sometimes they skated along the flooded washes. Only the willows along the bank watched them, and the ice hissed with their passage. They had stopped talking or thinking. Their legs and arms and bodies seemed to throw from side to side with the precise, untiring regularity of clock pendulums. Long before Hattie cried, "Look, Tom, the tower of Ely Cathedral!" From the river, however, Ely's tower plays a game with the traveller. Hattie and Tom skated and skated, and for a long time the tower seemed to let them come no nearer, but performed a mysterious movement instead, now to one side, now to the other, now ahead, according to the windings of the river. At last, however, they were certainly getting nearer, and now the cathedral tower began to disappear behind the nearer roof-tops, and here they were where the river curves in the town of Ely. They went ashore. Hattie unstrapped and unscrewed her skates and walked in her skating boots. She had no others. Tom slung his boots and skates round his neck and walked in his socks. They walked through the town, making for the cathedral, and went in through the great west door. Inside, the failing of winter daylight was beginning to fill the vastness with gloom. Through this they walked down the nave towards the octagon, and it seemed to Tom as if the roof of the cathedral were like a lesser sky, for although they walked steadily, when they looked upwards they moved very little in relation to its spaces. Hattie walked with dazzled eyes. "Oh, I never thought there was anywhere so big, so beautiful," she said. They passed a verger, and Tom whispered to Hattie, "Ask about going up the tower." She turned back and did so. The verger said the young lady could go up if she would be waiting by the font at the west end in 10 minutes from now. It was the last ascent of the day. The charge was 6d. They spent the interval in walking round the cathedral. At last they came out of the Lady Chapel. Tom lingered to read a memorial tablet to a certain Mr. Robinson, gentleman of the city, who had exchanged time for eternity on the 15th day of October, 1812, at the age of 72. Tom reflected that, in a way, he was intending to copy Mr. Robinson. He meant to exchange ordinary time, that would otherwise move on towards Saturday, for an endless time, an eternity, in the garden. Exchanged time for eternity, Tom repeated aloud, and noticed that the walls of the cathedral returned not the slightest echo of his voice. The silence was chilling. Hattie had turned back to see what kept Tom. Now, over his shoulder, she too read the inscription, and her attention was caught by the same quaint phrase. "Exchange time for eternity," she read aloud. Time, eternity. The words spoken by Hattie made a little echo, and her voice and its echo filled the silence after Tom's speaking, so that he was somehow comforted by the sound. Impulsively he turned to Hattie. He would confide in her. He would tell her all that he had intended. He would do it now. But Hattie was looking towards the font. Already people were waiting there, and she moved to join them. Nor did Tom wish to delay her, for he too wanted to go up the tower. He followed Hattie. After all, he could talk to her later, when they had started the long run home to Castleford. He would have plenty of time then. That's the end of the chapter. I wonder if he will have plenty of time, or perhaps if something might happen. We'll have to find out in the next chapter. Bye-bye.